at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Paul Manafort went from Donald Trump campaign chairman in 2016 to convicted felon, pleading guilty to 2 charges of conspiracy to defraud the United States and witness tampering, to the beneficiary of a presidential pardon before Trump left office, to now author. He has a new book. It is entitled Political Prisoner, Persecuted, Prosecuted, but Not Silenced. Paul Manafort, political consultant and government affairs professional, former Trump campaign chairman, joins us now. Paul, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan. It's good to be with you this morning.
Before we get to your saga of the last 10 years or so, just to focus on the relationship with Trump and how that started. People may not remember, but it seemed to be like a chance meeting at Trump Tower, and he learned that you had been involved in presidential campaigns previous. I mean, people forget this. A lot of establishment Republican presidential campaigns going back to Gerald Ford, and talking about his campaign, and somehow he enlisted your help. I mean, is that sort of how ad hoc that your involvement with his campaign actually happened?
No, I mean, there was some uniqueness to the way the campaign involvement started, but actually I'd known Donald Trump going back to the early 80s, and my partners and I started a firm in 1980 after Ronald Reagan was elected president. We were involved in running the campaign for Governor Reagan at the time, and when we opened up our business, one of my partners had been handling the Northeast for the Reagan campaign, knew Trump from the campaign, and when Trump saw what we were going to be doing in Washington, political consulting and government affairs, he hired us as a client, and so I've known him really since then. Although I was not spending a whole lot of time with him, my partner handled the account, and really I'd not seen Donald in about 10 years prior to getting involved in this campaign in 2016. And
so then, how did you reconnect and get involved?
Well, I mean, we have a lot of friends, and some mutual friends. And I was with one of them at a time when Trump's campaign was running into a patch of difficulty. He was winning primaries, but he wasn't winning delegates. And to be the nominee of the party, you have to win delegates. And in many states, there's a difference between how delegates are elected to national conventions, which happens to be one of my expertise. Trump was running into that problem. Cruz was making some headway on electing delegates where Trump was winning the state primaries, and Trump was concerned. So he, talking to his friends, one of his friends reached out to me, who was a friend of mine, told me about it. I explained sort of what had to get done, and that led to a series of meetings with my ultimate involvement in the campaign.
Now, do you two still talk to one another?
I am not really. I've taken a position right now. I'm not really going to be talking about the conversations I have with the president. But let's just say that I'm sort of privy to what's going on and what activities his PAC is taking and things like that.
And what about his new social media venture, Truth Social?
Well, I'm aware of it. I mean, I'm not involved in it, but I'm aware of it.
So with respect to your dealings with overseas actors, how much did President Trump understand what your business had become by 2016, and was there any bleed over into your business interests and the campaign?
There was no bleed over interest at all. My activities overseas, for the most part, were running elections, and elections only in situations where if my candidate won, he would be consistent with U.S. foreign policy. I mean, that was something that was very important to me. And I ran them for 4 years all over the world. When I had my early meetings with Trump, I explained these to him, and he had no problem with the activities, including where I'd been. One of the rumors
and he knew about Yanukovych. He knew about your relationship with
well,
Yanukovych.
That's what I was about to say. One of the falsehoods that was spread, during the course of this Russian hoax was Yanukovych and being pro-Putin and things like that. In fact, and this is all public information, I get into this in detail in the book, Yanukovych was the one who prepared the way for Ukraine to be part of Europe. When I got involved with Yanukovych, we had long conversations, and I was of the theory that, like Nixon is the only one who could go to China, yet somebody from eastern Ukraine, the Russian part of the Russian heritage part of Ukraine, only someone from that area could bring Ukraine into Europe. And frankly, it's been proven true to me. And one of the things you need to understand, and again, I get into this in the book, Ukraine is two countries. There's the Russian heritage part, which is eastern Ukraine, and then there's the more European part, which is the west, closer to Hungary and Poland. But in all my campaign, and I probably did more detailed survey research than anybody ever has in Ukraine, Eastern Ukrainians who are Russian heritage, love their Russian, don't want to lose their Russian culture, their Russian religion, or their Russian language. But they are Ukrainians first, not Russians. And this is what Putin is finding out this very day. I mean, he thought that just because he would want to reunite Ukraine with Russia, that the East would just move en masse over to support his war efforts. Exactly the opposite is true. And I knew that. Yanukovych knew that. And Yanukovych took actions as president that were necessary to change the economic structure, the legal structure, the social structure, and to the point that we were close to getting ready to sign for Europe, into Europe. And that's when Putin went crazy and threatened to cut off all of Russian trade to Ukraine, which was 70% of its market, which forced Yanukovych not to quit the movement, but to just ask for a break to work out the deal with Putin, because Putin was going crazy.
So Yanukovych is deposed in this maiden revolution, where more than 100 protesters were killed in Kyiv, so what is your handle, your explanation for him being overthrown by his people? This is not a Putin stooge. This was somebody who is a Ukrainian freedom fighter who was overthrown by whom?
Well, first of all, he wasn't a Putin stooge. That is correct. Secondly, everything I just said about Ukraine and what Yanukovych did, you can see. He was working closely with the Obama administration, and all of this is on other things too. But three, the overthrow. I mean, unfortunately, and this is true of most of these post-Soviet early governments, the corruption was at levels that I didn't even realize, because it wasn't something I was focusing on. And when there was an uproar created by probably external forces, that Yanukovych fled, which he shouldn't have done. I was against it. I was angry about it, and I haven't talked to him since, frankly. But there's never been any proof that the government fired on any of those people in the wall. Of course, I would have been opposed to all of it as well. Yanukovych said he had nothing to do with it, and I believe it.
So do you think the United States is doing enough to help try and stop this Russian invasion?
Absolutely not. Yeah, absolutely not. I mean, Zelensky has. I mean, it's a shame. I mean, we're talking about 44 million people about to lose their freedom to a Soviet dictator. Zelensky's doing a magnificent job. I mean, this is a guy who was not trained for this moment, yet he has woken the world up to the importance of what they need to protect in Ukraine. But I mean, Biden is continuing to, bark very loudly and have no bite. No bite. I mean, these sanctions aren't going to work. And now they're talking about finally doing what Zelensky was asking for months on, to give, basically old Russian MiGs that the NATO forces have over to Ukraine, so they can at least have an air force to deal with what would be easy pickings of these long caravans, as one example. That doesn't have to involve us, but Putin has scared Biden into thinking that if he does anything, that's a declaration of war against them. Well, Putin has declared war on the West, and he's not stopping in Ukraine. I mean, he's made that clear. He wants to reassemble the greater Russian Empire, which includes most of Eastern Europe and some of the Baltics. Now, Putin's going to learn, however, that if he thought Afghanistan was difficult for the Russians to occupy, Ukraine will even be harder, because You've got 44 million freedom fighters in Ukraine, and they're not going to give in to Russian aggression and even Russian dominance. They won't give in. And what has happened, thanks to Zelensky and nobody else, is he's given NATO a purpose again. He's reminded NATO what they're supposed to be defending. Back when we were making application in 2013 to be part of, for Ukraine to be part of the European Union, we talked about associate membership in NATO too for this very reason, because it was clear as the bell that if Ukraine was a part of Europe and not a part of NATO, that they would be at risk to exactly the aggression that it's facing today.
I want to go back to Yanukovych for a second, because we have to get your take on the Black Ledger, this ledger that was found at Yanukovych's estate that detailed something on the order of $13 million in payments to you. So what was that money for?
That was it said. First of all, it's a cash payment. I never was paid cash for anything. Secondly, the Black Ledger has already been proven to be a false document by a Ukrainian-U.S. joint venture investigatory committee. I mean, within I think a month of them coming out with that Black Ledger against me, and we now have seen proof through Durham and through the Intelligence Committee's investigations. The Hillary Clinton campaign, a woman named Chaluba, who was a DMC staffer, went to Ukraine, worked with Clinton supporters in Ukraine to try and find dirt on me. They couldn't find any. And so then the Black Ledger was all of a sudden popped up. The National Anti-Corruption Bureau, which is an investigative body set up by the government of the United States and the government of Ukraine to sort out the corruption in Ukraine, almost immediately said this is a fake document. But you never read that because it didn't fit the Russian hoax narrative.
I'm sorry, but what about the Senate Intel report? I just want to cover a couple more topics. The Senate Intel report, the relationship you had with this former Russian intelligence officer named Konstantin Kilimnik. And
that's a joke.
Okay, and I just let me get to the assertion. The assertion that was made in ProPublica and other outlets that you two, Kilimnik and you, had worked on a plan for Ukraine that would create an autonomous Republic of Donbass in the separatist-run southeast Ukraine on the Russian border, and that you were working on a survey of public attitudes to Yanukovych after he had been deposed with the idea of putting this plan into action.
Yeah, this is all Andrew Weissman's BS. First of all, Kilimnik is not a Russian agent. Never was. In fact, he was a U.S. asset. Number two, the poll that they're talking about was a poll for a presidential campaign in Ukraine. And number three, the plan was a plan that, first of all, wasn't something that Kilimnik and I were working on. It was something that was in the public domain that I was opposed to, and on the record opposed to. But this was Andrew Weissman of the Mueller Commission report who tried to create this narrative because they had nothing. And so they had to find some fiction to talk, to cling on to project their Russian narrative. It never worked. And even the Mueller Commission report ended up throwing everything out, saying that there was no evidence of any of that. And all of this, by the way, that you're talking about in this plan was done after the elections in the United States, not before. So there was no Russian collusion even on that part. But it's all part of the narrative that this book really is meant to expose.
Well, but was that a plan that you were a part of? Because it could be done after the election, but it still then would be your business bleeding over into the Trump presidency.
Yeah, no, as I said to you a minute ago, no, I was opposed to the plan.
You're opposed to it.
The report of the plan was wrong to start with, as far as I understand. But two, I was totally opposed to it. There's no way that I was supportive of anything separating Ukraine. In fact, I had worked for 10 years of my life to have a united Ukraine. I wasn't going to slice off the eastern part to satisfy anybody. I mean,
so then what happened? I mean, there's so much cloak and dagger intrigue, and all of these players and different people have different handles on them, including our own government, including the Senate Intel report on this, and that distinguishes their views from yours. But I mean, do you feel like you made any mistakes I know you pled guilty to crimes, but did you do that because you really are guilty of crimes, or you felt that you had to because you couldn't beat the federal government? I mean, what is your handle on your last 10 years of work in politics and foreign and politics here as well as in foreign places?
Everything I was charged with had been just looked at before the special commission. In fact, over the last 6 years before the elections, even, and rejected as creditworthy to bring prosecution against me. All of this got put into the fishbowl of the special counsel and the Russian collusion mania, and I was the target because, frankly, I was the one that Weissman thought he could go after to try and get Trump. And that's what I was I was simply a tool in the game.
But there was no financial fraud you believe you committed. There was no, you were not in bed with any unsavory characters. There was no, there was nothing that ran afoul of federal law that you did in your view.
In my view, as you'll see in the book, no. And in fact, in my view, the way in which they came after me violated the constitutional rights of mine and of all Americans, and we talked about that. But why did I plead guilty? They went after my family as well. I had to, and I couldn't. There was no way I could. I had lost in the domain of public opinion at that point in time because, frankly, I had a gag order on me. I was in solitary confinement, and I couldn't do anything to defend myself other than through court briefings in front of a judge who was not favorable to or even impartial. But and Weissman and company were leaking things every day, damaging my reputation. So I had no reputation left by the time I was going to court. And I get into this in detail in the book, and we'll talk about exactly why I ended up doing the plea agreement.
Okay. All right.
But it was not because of justice. It was just the opposite.
He is Paul Manafort, former campaign chairman, Donald Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. The book that he was referencing, we were discussing, Political Prisoner, Persecuted, Prosecuted, but Not Silenced, which is available for pre-order at all the usual places. Paul Manafort, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line. Coming up on Chicago's Morning Answer.
I don't know.
I have Jeffrey A. Tucker joins us.
Well, I know, but I'm still trying to process the Paul
Right.
Manafort interview. I guess we'll talk to Jeffrey Tucker, then maybe we'll return to processing that Manafort interview.
All right, but now let's head into the newsroom. Here is Mike Scott. Good morning, Mike.
Snow expected throughout the Chicagoland area until about noontime today. It's gumming up the morning ride to work. Bail set at $1 million for a man charged with 2